What's up, Church Hurt fam? Welcome back to another episode of the Church Hurt podcast. I'm your host, Darryl Williams, and on this show, we have conversations with current church members who've experienced church hurt in the past, have left for a period of time, and have come back, and we explore why they left and how they stay today. But before we dive into today's show with our special guest, just want to address a few things. One, as you notice, I'm hosting solo for this episode. My amazing co-host, Melissa, has decided to step back from hosting for a period of time. She's still helping us on the back end doing the social media and the YouTube, which I'm super grateful for because it's a lot of work. But there's no beef. It's all love with M. So I will be hosting, and hopefully you guys will still tune in. If you want to know more about why she stepped back, you can check her Instagram out. She tells her story and why she decided to step back from the podcast, but we won't be discussing that here. But I just want to let you guys know, as you will be seeing me hosting solo dolo for the foreseeable future. Now, with that being said, we have a special guest in the house today, flown all the way from Dalton, Georgia, Grace Martin. What's up, Grace?
Hi.
You're laughing. How you feeling today?
Pretty good. Explored New York. Every time I go to a different state, like I always try to live like the locals do, and then it kind of gives me like a perspective of how people live there, and just imagining like what life would be like if I was there. Yeah, like that's the way I integrate myself, like in the when I go to a new state.
Is this your first time here in New York?
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah. Wow. First time in the East Coast.
On the East Coast.
Does Virginia count as East Coast?
Yes.
Okay, never mind. But first time in New York.
Yeah, first time in New York.
Yeah.
Well, I'm so grateful that you came all the way out to New York for the first time to be on the Church Hurt podcast. That means a lot. What have you done so far since you've been here?
So yesterday, like just figuring out how to
subway.
The subway, and then the buses, and then which one goes to where. And then how to follow my map. And I'm notorious for having a map and still getting lost. And I got lost yesterday, but it's okay because it's an adventure.
Yeah, it's an adventure. You score something in New York you otherwise wouldn't have done if you didn't get lost.
Yeah.
Did you try Beyond Sushi? I know you emailed me.
I did.
That. How'd you like it?
That was really good.
It was really good.
Yeah, I love when people try to make something different out of like what you normally have, and then so that was a great I love eating like replacement meats and stuff like that.
Do you normally eat plant-based or no?
I try to when there's stuff around, but then I'm not super strict with I try to eat pretty clean. Like if I eat meat, I try to eat mostly just chicken, fish. But when I have a chance to try something where it's like pretty creative and like where you're having to change meat to a different kind, I have to try it because then I try to make it at home. I
understand. I love Beyond Sushi. I love New York City in general, obviously because I live here, but because it has so many vegan restaurants and it caters to my diet.
Yeah.
But I'm glad so far you're liking New York and it hasn't been traumatizing for you.
It's just very different from Georgia.
Yes. I actually lived in Georgia for about a period of 5 years. I went to 8th grade and then all of high school, and then I left a month after I graduated high school and moved back to New York. I was like, I can't live in the South anymore. It's not for me.
I'm the opposite for you. I do love being in the South, like more like a little bit more peace for me, but I don't mind this either. But I know like if this was my forever thing, I'm like
probably not.
I'd start like getting a little anxious and just like having to feel like I'm having to rush every day. That's not my...
It's definitely a hustle. You definitely can't just be last day school in New York. People are just going to move you along if you're not moving. But listen, again, thank you so much for flying all the way out here to New York to record the podcast. Super excited to dive into your story and hear a little bit more about what you've been through. But before we get there, take us back to the beginning. Like, what is the genesis of Grace Martin?
In the beginning, God created Grace. So that's the beginning. And so I was born in Saipan, and it's a U.S. territory. So my mom was Catholic, and then my dad is the one who's Adventist. And so I grew up in that Adventist culture. Like every morning, growing up, we listened to We Sing. I don't know
what that is.
Well, my mom would pop the tape, and then there's certain songs in there that I would listen to, like kind of like a routine every Sabbath mornings. And so I was really into the whole entire like church stuff. I was very active in church, always singing up front, always participating in like after Sabbath activities, going to community service and doing all that. But while all of that was happening when I was growing up, so I moved a lot. so much that I've been to 10 schools before.
Wow.
Yeah, I've been to 10 schools before high school. And so I didn't realize that that was going to affect me later on in life, like in terms of stability. But I have to mention that because it's an important part of like my story.
Okay.
So like a lot of moving, a lot of caretakers, a lot of homes. So there was no...
Military family?
No.
Oh, okay.
I don't know. It seemed like it was financial issues most of the time. And so I actually just recently thought of this, and I actually lived a foster kid's life because I had different caretakers from my mom's side and my dad's side, and it always changed. I would be with my parents maybe for a good 2 years, but it wasn't consistent. And so, but even so, growing up as a kid, like I didn't think of that as bad or anything. Like it was something, I thought this is just a normal thing, you know? But I do remember a lot that when every time I go and live with my dad's side family, I've lived with my great grandma, I lived with my grandma, and then I lived with my aunt. That felt like home to me.
Okay.
So there was really no home for me to call. And like I said, I was like an easygoing kid, like go with the flow, like this is life. But I remember, actually, I was reflecting yesterday. I was like, you know what? Like when I was with my dad's side family, that was home.
Yeah.
That's what made it home for me. And so because I would regularly go to church with them like on Saturdays. And like I said, it was just an amazing childhood because of that, despite the circumstances that we were on. And
what about your mom's side of the family? It wasn't home for you?
Not really, because, I guess that's probably the difference between like an Adventist home versus a non-Adventist home. Because like my mom's side, like they're mostly Catholics and they didn't really practice like faith or anything like that.
It's culturally Catholic, not really like...
I think so.
Yeah, okay.
I don't know what they were, honestly, because we didn't really go to church or anything like that when I stayed with them.
Okay.
But then with my dad's side family, we were always going to church, always participating, singing. We have Adventist youth in the afternoon, which something I look forward to because it's like hanging out with friends and playing like a lot of Bible games.
I remember those days.
yeah. I was like, and so I had a really fun childhood, like despite all the chaos that was happening at home and outside of me.
Okay.
I didn't think that it was a bad thing. I just thought that's how life was. And, early in life, I've always realized that God was there with me no matter where I went. I felt his presence, like wherever I went, I felt him always right next to me. So it didn't feel like I was, all alone or no home.
No home. And that was in your early years. When did the moving stop? Just for like, when did you finally settle somewhere and you guys stayed?
So... I'm born in Saipan, and I was there till I was 4 years old. Then I moved in Philippines.
Okay.
From 4 years old till 12, I was in Philippines.
Okay.
And then after that, I went back to Saipan, and Saipan is a small island. It's 7 miles wide and I think it's 13 miles long. So it's a small. You can like kind of classify it as a small town, basically.
Is it part of the Philippines though?
No. It's close to Philippines, but it's actually U.S. territory. But it's like Philippines is in the bottom here, and then Saipan is like a little dot. Actually, do you know where Guam is?
Kind of vaguely. I've looked at a map before.
Okay, so but like Japan will be here, and then China here, and then here's the Pacific Ocean, and then tiny little that is Saipan.
Okay.
Yeah, so
I'll Google it later.
Yeah, but it's paradise there, and so it's like living in Hawaii. Like when people think of Hawaii, that kind of living.
Okay.
So Saipan is that way, just a small scale. So it's like the island life. But even when we moved there and it's a small island, I don't know how many homes we've lived in, but my mom, it was just my mom, me, and my brother, and then we would have some roommates. Like it's like a complex, I guess, with different people where we shared the same kitchen and then same bathrooms. It wasn't just like an apartment and then you have your own space, but it was shared amongst like other families. But even then we moved, I don't know, I think 6 times while I was in Saipan. And I was in Saipan from 12 till I graduated high school, which I was 19 when
you guys were moving so much, did you always go to a new church?
No.
No.
I always went to the same church like when I was in Philippines, because with my dad's side family, they live in one particular area.
Okay.
So we ended up going to General Trias Cavite, which is that was my home church, considered my home church.
In Saipan.
But in Saipan, there was only one Adventist church. So, and like I said, it's a small town, so everyone is able to go there. But later on, I'll talk a bit about it later. But there was another church that I was a part of, where we pretty much like planted a church and started one. And I started going there.
All right. So overall, you moved a lot, but it didn't sound like a horrible childhood. But do you hate moving today?
So my husband is the complete opposite of me.
Yeah.
He has lived in Dalton, Georgia all his life. So polar opposites, which is perfect. Like God really creates us in the way God created me and Michael, like with our history, it's just perfectly melded together, because I needed someone who had a stable home.
I understand that.
Yeah, so now I am used to stability. Like I'm dreading, we're trying to buy a house, and so we're kind of dreading like moving. We're excited, but also having to unpack everything or pack everything and then unpack it, find a home and all that. But I really enjoy, staying in one place and then having a familiar place to go to, like going home, same couch, the same kitchen, the same spot. And those little things, like I've learned to just appreciate, like just having this little corner in the house or just a little chair, like where it's settled. I appreciate it so much.
I understand. I asked because I also moved a lot when I was a kid, and it made me like hate luggage and hate stuff when I moved. So even when I travel today, I always only carry a carry-on because I don't like stuff. I hate the packing and the moving. It was terrible for me.
I guess I'm like that too, because like I do this thing called Swedish Death, and I do it I try to do it every 3 months, and it's this idea where you purge your stuff of things you don't use, you don't need, and then donate it, give it away. And then so that like when you pass later in life, you're not leaving stuff for your loved ones to go through. Because
Swedish Death.
Yeah. That's interesting. I think it's a practice by people from Sweden. I could be wrong, but like I heard it from my YouTube and I was like, you know what? I'm going to name that what I do. Because I purge every 3 months.
Oh, okay.
Because I just don't like holding on to material things.
I understand.
Yeah.
Okay. So childhood grace. Well, what was your view of God growing up?
When I was still like in Philippines.
Yeah, when you were still in the Philippines, you're still your formative years. Like, what was your view of God?
Yeah, so although I saw him as a loving father, I think I mostly saw him as a loving father, but I didn't think he was really involved that much.
So distant, you felt?
Yeah, because there was a lot of things going on at home. So my dad is a player, and he has cheated multiple times on my mom, which caused my mom to, I see that now, a lot of stress, and she kind of took it on me. I've always apparently, and this is reports from my parents too, this is not something I've just claimed and assumed, but my parents said so themselves, that between me and my I have an older brother, between me and my brother, I'm the stronger one. And so my mom's, in my perspective as a child, it seemed like my brother always like kind of got away with stuff and didn't. I felt like my mom was always on my case all the time, always angry at me, screaming at me. But I start to realize, like, as I work through our life and really thinking about my parents and what they went through, like it was a very stressful time for them. But it does not excuse the behaviors that they displayed, because I learned later on that how my mom treated me and like how my dad was in our family dynamics really affected my mental health, and that's really contributed to a lot of abandonment issues and just feeling unloved, neglected, and never amounting to being good enough.
Yeah. And
so my view of God is the same, because there's some kind of YouTube that I saw that was actually really cool, or really weird, because it feels like it relates to us so much that our parents, in a way, sometimes we really look up to them. The picture in that video was super wild, because like it shows a baby worshiping the mom and the dad, but in a way that's
true.
How...
Yeah, your first view of God is formed by your parents.
Yeah,
I've heard it a lot, especially like your father in your life, and if he's a certain way, and it's like, okay, God, especially if you're in a religious home and then your father is like opposite of what a loving God should be, is like, well, God must be like that. I don't want any part of that. I've heard it before, and I've kind of seen it play out in people's life. But people have shared stories, and like, yeah, he was this way, or my parents were this way, and this is kind of how I I put that back on God.
Yeah.
So, go ahead.
Yeah, and so that's, although like I said, I saw God as someone loving, I didn't really have much questions of like why was bad things happening to me until later when I was a teenager. But growing up until I was like 12, it was still, I guess this is just normal part of life, but it was super chaotic. I'll actually share just a little bit. There are three like key points in my life that has contributed to how I am today. And so one of my first like major betrayal from my parents was from my dad.
Yeah.
And I'm not gonna share the details, but basically, I don't want to. It makes me cry, and something I still have to work through, like in my own personal time. But so basically, like I really experienced betrayal, feeling like, oh, I really don't have this person to rely on. That's when just knowing that, oh, he can't be there for me, because he did something that, just basically like I was thrown into this conflict, and
between you and his mom and your
there
mom.
was a conflict within the community that we were living at the time. And then because my dad was, having some relations with someone, and apparently I'm the one, I was spreading rumors and lies, and they were having like this big meeting with like the woman's husband and some of her children, and then my dad there, some other people, like,
wow,
to clarify. And basically I felt so betrayed because my dad like didn't defend me. In fact, he's the one who said, tell them that you were just spreading lies and rumors. But it's not a lie.
Crazy.
Yeah, because and the thing is, I try to be not an assuming person, because later on, like, I like to prove things with facts. Like if someone was to tell me, oh my gosh, did you hear about blah blah blah, I don't believe those people until, or I don't
you review it for yourself. You don't take it at face value. Trust but verify.
Yeah, because that's not fair to the other person, right? So I'm always like that. I'm always checking the facts. And so later on, I went back home, crying, and just, I guess I was traumatized at that time, probably because I was like, I think 9 years old. And so to go through that adult stuff, like, is heavy wild. For like for a 9-year-old kid. But then I remember, like, I was just covered up under my blankets, and my dad and his friend came in the room, and they were just talking. They thought I was sleeping. And I heard his friend say, so are you going to admit it? And then my dad said no. So that confirms that.
That's not a loving father.
Yeah. No, not at all. So it's like, so for me, that was the day that I lost him, that I knew that I can't trust this person. Therefore, I can't trust anyone, that's when I started thinking I can't trust anyone at all.
No, that's tough to go through at 9 years old. So did that start to cloud kind of because there's this tension, like you got his loving father, but also he was kind of distant, basically. Yeah.
I just, like I said, I didn't think he was involved.
He was involved because all this was happening, but like, if God was involved, like, why would my dad cheat on my mom? Or he would put me out to hang me to dry like that.
But I didn't really it didn't really bother me. I didn't really think of, like, why God, why at that time? Not until later.
Not until later.
Not
okay,
until
so
I got older.
Let's fast forward then to you're older, and you're living in the States now. When you're older, when did you move to America?
19.
19. Yeah. Okay, so now you're in America. You're 19. Tell us about that move and where you settled and the local church you found.
Actually, let's go back just a little bit when I was in Saipan, because that's a key point on how my my relationship with God kind of got. Well, not necessarily better, but how I really started seeing God as
in your life, someone
that's really involved in my life.
Okay.
So growing up, like, as a child, like, I already felt, or I didn't really feel like insecure or anything. Like I said, I'm an easy-go-lucky kid, like really happy and like just going along with the flow. And I understand that since I experienced like things in the past, like I understand that life is not always pretty. And and I accepted that. And so for me, like, well, what can I do? There's nothing much I can do. I understood that. And then so in Saipan, I, same thing. I was so active, like Pathfinders. I was the leader. I led lead worship. I preached. I did all these things. And so we'll dive into a little bit of like family stuff too. So my addiction, I had a little bit of an obsession with doing all that. I mean, it felt like an addiction to me because I kept wanting to pursue things.
In the church, you mean like?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because I was trying to win the approval of my mom. This time it's my mom, because my dad at this time is in Philippines, and then in Saipan, I'm only living with my mom and my brother.
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, I wanted to reach all these things and do all these things, and for her to just tell me, I'm proud of you. You know, I did like all of that. And because I lived with her for 12 to 19, so 7 years. So, because I already know that one parent is not going to be there for me. So, okay, I have another one to choose, you know, like to try to find love from. Mm-hmm. And so, obviously, that didn't really happen. A lot of, again, like blaming. And I get it because she hurt people. Yeah. And also, you can't give what you didn't get. And so I understand that later on. But yeah, I just was doing all these things, and people would compliment me like crazy with praises, like you sing well, and I'm aware I do sing well and I do these things well. Yeah. But
you weren't getting it from the person you wanted.
Because I was in a band. I was also in theater, and I was casted in minor roles.
Wow, like a lot.
Yeah, if I was someone else's child, I'd be a star kid. That's what I've always said. Like someone else would, like my mother-in-law, mm-hmm. she would have been head over heels for like the things I'm doing. You know, it should try to show up at every single event, and that was the one thing that I remember that hurt me a lot was. And actually, this goes into a little bit of the hurt. The church hurt is not necessarily the church; it's actually from family, from the brokenness of how my parents was in my mind, like mm-hmm. representing how this all was. And so I just wanted her to show up. Mm-hmm. I didn't need her to be super mom. We weren't making a lot of money, and I'm aware of that, and I didn't care. You know, I always struggled with money, and it's not a big deal to me. But I just wanted her to show up in my shows, to show me that I'm here for you. But maybe she has attended one, but I don't remember any. Yeah. And they're free. Like the tickets are free. And yeah, so it got harder, especially when you're a teenager. I see this now, working in the adolescents, in the inpatient psych. It's like all they're wanting is for their parents to listen to them, to really hear them out, and for them to show up. Those are the main things that's lacking in their life. And like, yeah, it's hard for me to not talk about it without crying, because like because it's still something that I crave for, and like what I feel hurt with, like with these kids, it's like all I wanted was for my mom to like show up and just to be there for me, because the world was getting darker and darker. Yeah. But despite that, I also used like going to church a lot and staying in school for a long time to escape the darkness at the same time. Yeah. Like I wanted my mom, but I was also escaping her at the same time. Yeah. Because I would be in school till like 11 o'clock.
Wow. Jeez.
Because of the productions.
And everything.
Not all the time, but she didn't really care much about like how long I stayed and whatever. Mm-hmm. I wasn't doing any bad things, and I was always in church, because anything I wanted to be anywhere but home, because home, I
didn't feel like home.
No, I felt like I'm gonna get in trouble for breathing. It felt that way. But despite that, God has brought other people in my life that would give that nurturing aspect that I'm not getting from my mom. So there's a key person in my life. I still see her until today. She's like my, mom. Not replacement, but like someone who
second mom.
Yeah, second mom. Someone who was able to give me what my biological mom is not able to give, And so she, her name is Girly, and she like saw the potential in me that I didn't, because I felt really insecure and didn't think I was so good for anything. And so she saw that, and all she did was believe in me, and I'm like, oh wow, someone believes in me. Until this day, the reason why I continuously go with my desire to help others is because she helped me first, because she inspired me to be more than that, and so I told her one time, I was like, you know what, we're like Naomi and Ruth.
Good analogy.
Yeah, and so she was the key point in my life that showed me that there's still hope in the world. And at this point, like going back to, I think, how my view of God is, despite the chaos at home, since I felt so alone and I had no one to run to, and despite having like, Tita Girly in my life, I was still having that emptiness. And so naturally I went to God, because I was like, you know what, God is the one who can give us like what humans cannot give. And so that's what I did. I didn't pray like normally, like where I kneel down and pray and talk to God. That's awkward to me, but I journaled a lot and very vulnerably. Like I just write like, dear God. And that was the way I communicated with God and really developed that personal, close relationship with him.
Okay. So it sounds like you're pretty resilient, like going through like growing up, teenage years, like despite all that, it's like you still held on to that belief of God despite a father who hurt you and a mother who didn't really show you the love and affection, probably dealing with her own hurt from her husband. Were they still married or?
So Filipinos never get divorced.
Okay.
They were separated for a while, but they're back together, I guess. Like they're in California right now.
Okay, got you. Right. Yeah. So despite all of that, you were still pursuing God, doing all these things in the church, and you found someone in your life that can kind of help build that up inside of you. So what made you leave Saipan at 19 then and move to the US?
So remember my desire earlier of not wanting to be home?
Yeah.
That desire never stopped until I graduated. I was like, I am determined to live this place, because it was pure chaos. Because so at 18 I didn't know it then, but I had my first like mental breakdown. Basically, I was severely depressed, clinically, like classic symptoms of clinical depression. I nearly did not graduate, and I was just staying at home. I would wake up, just lay there, and church people were getting concerned, and they would try to peel me away. Because imagine the girl who's always there, the girl who's always active, singing out of nowhere. Where is she? So people were concerned, and and my mom didn't know how to handle that. And in fact, like, I don't know, I don't know how she handled. I didn't really like dig into that much, but I had my first mental breakdown, feeling depression, and the only reason why I got out of it was because when school told me that I couldn't graduate, I was like, I've got to graduate, because that's my only ticket way out. That was my determination. Wow. Like my goal was exactly to leave home, and for me, I was like, I gotta do absolutely everything I can to leave home, because I can't take this anymore. I can't. And I fundraised my ticket. Actually, I did a concert.
Oh, wow.
Because we didn't have money. So I'm used to like fundraising and, making my money that way. So I was like, there's one gift that God gave me. And I'm like, I can use it to fundraise so I can, go. And so fundraise and made enough money. And then I was able to go, and I left. And then my first stop was in Arizona to be a camp counselor. And then... Church.
Okay.
Yeah, because someone told me that's what they did, and it helps with tuition for Southwestern, and I didn't know anything about America, but for me, I didn't care. Like I was 19, but like I said, my desire of wanting to leave was so strong that it didn't matter where I was, anywhere but home. Yeah. I remember telling myself anywhere but home. Wow. And so, since I had my break, I started going downhill a little bit already, but I was still trying to kind of fake it till I make it with church. Okay. So trying to to look okay, appear okay. I wasn't. I was already engaging in a lot of self-destructive behaviors. I'm not gonna get into details with that. It wasn't like, thank goodness, like I was never attracted to drinking or smoking or doing drugs or anything like that, but I did other things were I was very ashamed of. But I just, when people do that, I realize now it's like we're trying to fill that void, And then during my mental break, that's when I started questioning. I was like, are you really there? Starting to ask God, like, if you're really there, like, why are you throwing all these things at me? Why does it seem like I'm your target?
That's a good question. Like, God, why does it seem like I'm your target? Wow.
Yeah. And I dared ask that question, but I didn't share it with anyone. That was in my journals. That's why I'm afraid people like reading my journals, because I ask difficult, like, questions that as Christians, as a good Adventist, shouldn't really ask, but I was like, I want the truth in my life, and I'm getting tired of this life, And I was like, basically that famous phrase, why God, why? I uttered those words and I meant it. Like, why? Like, why me? Out of all my other friends, and I was like constantly comparing myself to my other friends and like seeing that like their life was slightly a little bit better than mine. But, that was bad to compare.
Yeah,
But yeah, so I started questioning his existence. but I believed at the same time. You know, I just wanted to understand, like, why would you allow things to happen to me? Yeah, just why?
Yeah. No, it's a good question. I think it's a question that a lot of people ask when things in your life is not going the way you expected. I've asked that question, why God? At various times in my life. So how long were you in Arizona for?
Just a summer.
Just a summer.
Yeah.
And then you went back to the Philippines?
Oh, no, at this point I was already in the States.
Done. You're in the States, so you're like...
I was in Arizona, then I went to Texas for a semester. It didn't really work well. And then I went to Southern for one semester. And then met my husband, which we'll move into that. But like that whole entire year, my first year here in America was the darkest
years of life.
Yeah, because when you're by yourself, like at first I didn't think about me being alone, because like I said, like you said, I'm pretty resilient, go with the flow. But that's the very first time that I've never had anyone with me that I know. And it was scary. Like, well, scary, but also
liberating, because you're away from the Philippines.
Or Saipan.
Saipan.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, no, it's okay.
So what was that event, that catalyst that then made you turn? And because you mentioned in your story, like you kind of became like an atheist, like at least maybe in your life, or at some part you believe that maybe he really doesn't exist.
I did.
Like, what was that event that triggered that for you? Was it something that happened at church, or something with a church member, or a fellow Christian? Like, what was that event that led to it?
It's a collective thing. So going to 2 different Christian colleges for 2 semesters, I started noticing how they just seemed really fake.
Were they both Adventist universities?
Yeah. Both of them are Adventist universities. And so I just saw, it's like, why are people, they felt fake to me. Like they weren't real Christians. And at that point, I was also just feeling really depressed, really lonely, engaging in more, self-destructive behaviors. And seeing that people were not, I guess, like I wasn't really an open person, and people, when they meet me, they know that I'm cool, I'm okay, like nothing's going on with me. But at the same time, I don't know, they just felt fake to me, not genuine. Like they're pretending to be something that they're not. And I can't describe why.
Do you think that was maybe a reflection of what you were feeling?
Probably.
You're projecting on them? Okay.
Yeah, because like I'll move into like, when I came back, when I went back, realizing...
Okay.
Yeah. So like, just looking around, it's like, hey, these people are just like not real Christians, and this is weird. Like I feel like I'm so different from them that I don't belong there too, because I felt like I'm this, like my background, I didn't have 2 good parents, and so it felt like I wasn't part of the crew, part of the club.
Gotcha. No, I understand. Yeah.
I felt like my background was too different, that I couldn't really fit the mold. I think the last person who spoke, I forgot what she said. I think something like that. I didn't fit the mold. It felt that way.
Oh yeah, Veronica. Yeah, she said.
But that was also part of me, because I was like doing things that I shouldn't be doing, and so that's a little bit of that too.
Yeah.
But at that point, my first year here, really, I was really questioning, and to the point I was like, I told God, like some of my journals were like, I don't want anything to do with you, because every single like month of my life feels like there's something going on, there's something happening, and it just never quits. I was like, why are you putting this all on me? I'm like, knowing what I know now, it's like, man, it's like Job.
When I went through it.
And realizing that we tend to, actually there's a podcast I listened to, and I really like how they presented Job. They said, how with Job's story, we forget that Satan is a key player in this world, and so, but I blamed God for everything. And I was angry. Like I was just at that point, like everything that I went through in the past started all like, just, it felt like it got dumped on me. All the emotional stuff that I avoided was now starting to seep out. And I ended up saying, I don't want anything to do with you. Like, and so I think for 2 years, so I really genuinely believe that, but at the same time, it's like I still felt his presence, but I wanted to deny that there was any presence. I'm like, go away. You're not there. This is just like the remains of what I thought you were. And so, because I was like, I'm just sick and tired of this. Like, my life is so crap. Like,
how can there be a God if my life is I'm doing everything. I'm participating in church. I'm doing all these events, like camp. I'm going to Adventist Christian college, and yet all this is still happening around people that seem one way, but maybe they're not. But maybe I'm projecting on them because I don't feel like I'm living up to what I should be as a Christian.
Well, I remember that too. I thought, like, you know what? I said, like, I'm too disgusting to be worthy of you anyway. Like, I've done so many bad things that I can't. There's no way that you can ever love me. Yeah. You know, and at that point, I don't even know the concept of God's love. Like, I knew it, but I didn't really know it. You know, and so from there on, like when I moved into the States, I guess that was 2014. So until I think maybe 2 or 3 years. Until 2019. So from 2014 till about, I think 2018, like
you were an atheist.
Basically.
Basically.
Yeah. Like I still believe, I didn't like believe, but I felt like the presence of the Holy Spirit. I mean, that's what it was, you know?
Tugging, just trying to pull you back to like, hey, I'm actually still here. I'm actually real.
Yeah.
But during that time period though, like when you were like, okay, I'm done with church. I'm done with reading the Bible and praying. Like I'm atheist, agnostic.
I never even really read the Bible.
Oh, okay. so with all that, then how was life during that period of like no church community, no explicit belief? Like how was that?
I know the answer.
Season of your life.
Because I think this all the time. Later on, as I was reflecting during the times that I denied God, it was miserable.
It was miserable.
Miserable. Like you're just living life for nothing. That's what it felt. Just the emptiness. It's truly empty at this point. It was just dark. And that was the word that I highlighted. Like when I think about it, it's like misery. Yeah. And later on when I came out of that, I was like, how can people live this? And then later on I realized like there's a lot of people who are still living this. And anyway, go ahead.
During that time period, did you try to speak, like maybe before you made the decision that you're piecing out with church and God, did you try to talk to other Christians about what you're going through? No.
I'm very private. I said, I don't trust anyone.
Oh.
So
okay.
like because of that, you know, I'm not like that now. Like I tell people, you know, stories, you know, but so another key thing is, so in 2015 I met my husband on OkCupid.
Okay.
And he was an atheist. We'll get into it. But he was an atheist. And so, you know, that wasn't such a hard, we kind of relate in a way where I was telling him about what I was experiencing.
Yeah.
And actually another key point that happened too that really hit it home run for me to think like, okay, I don't want anything to do with Christianity was, so I was new here, like I was in, you know, Tennessee, and I needed 2 favors. One, I was running out of, like, during the summer, in order for me to store my stuff at the college, I had to pay $250. I didn't have that money. And so I reached out to, there's a missionary that I knew, like from Saipan. So I reached out to her, thinking like, oh, she's going to help me out. Just to put my stuff. It doesn't occupy but the size of this table, that's what it occupies, right? Simple request. But she said she had no space. Mind you, they have like a 3-bedroom house with a garage. Like they definitely had space. Because later on I find out that she did that favor for someone else who's also from Saipan. And that definitely hurt a lot because that was a big deal for me. I didn't know what to do. And so out of desperation, I asked Michael, who I just met that night. I was like, I typically, like I said, I don't trust people. Let alone trust a complete stranger to do this favor for me. But he immediately said yes. My bubble burst when he said yes, like to storing my stuff. Because at that point, my view of atheist was that they're this angry, like waiting to like attack Christians. But my husband was not. He's this big guy who's really sweet. And I was like, I can't believe you're an atheist. Like in my mind, I was like, there is no way this person is an atheist. How is he like much kinder than a lot of these Christians that I was surrounding with? And so I was shocked. That's when that's the way that God was transforming me, was first bursting my bubble and opening up my perspectives to everyone. Because at that point I was closed. Like my worldview was just Adventism and all this, you know, all that belief within that. But then when I met Michael, like I said, bubble burst. And so, and then the other favor was like I didn't have anywhere to like stay at. So I asked this pastor that I went to a mission trip with. I was like, can you help me? Like, will I be able to stay at your place, or, you know, at least help me out, find something or somewhere? And he wasn't able to accommodate me. Okay, that's cool. But then he didn't really help me out to find somewhere to go. And I was freaking out because I'm not from here. And I didn't know how to deal with life in America. So again, I asked Michael for that favor, and he said yes. I mean, might have been easy because I'm a girl, you know, and he liked me.
that could have been it too.
So I started living with him. I'm a very private person because I know if I publicized it, I already know what people from my hometown would say.
Yeah.
And so and also, you know, you're living with someone. At that point we were already dating. Like
But you're married, so they're gonna all the things you should.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But later in December we did decide to get married because after 5 months of living together, we're like, oh, we're actually like cool together, you know.
Yeah.
So we got married like in December 2015, and so, and then since he was an atheist, like, you know, like it wasn't hard for me to like adapt in that. Like, he wasn't into anything bad or whatever. He just didn't believe that.
Just didn't believe in God. He was a Christian. And you were like, I'm not really a Christian either, so this can work. Christians have kind of let me down. And I was raised in a Christian home, and my father was acting very unchristian like, and my mother. So it's like, I get that. So you guys got married in 5 months after meeting each other. Yeah. Fast.
We only met each other for like a month too. It is.
Yeah. Listen, you guys are still married today. So like God's grace.
It's going to be 8 years. Actually, next week is our 8-year anniversary of meeting each other.
Oh, wow. See? Listen, untraditional way, but you guys are still together. God works in mysterious ways.
Yeah.
So when was it then now during that period, like no interaction with church people, it's just you and Michael, you're like, I'm done. When did those steps start coming back where you're like what was that? What was the event now that was like, maybe I need to go back to God and like give him a second chance, give the church, Christian community another go at it?
Yeah. So actually, like, it started with Michael being an atheist. Like I said, the voice, you know, the Holy Spirit never left my side. Even when I wanted to shoo it away, I'm like, literally in my mind, I'm like, shoo, bye, please, like, you don't exist. But it was actually a pretty profound question. And, you know, when people say like, oh, I heard that still small voice, I was like, that's not true. It's not real. But I did. Like, but for me, I didn't hear it, but it's a strong impression.
An impression on you.
Yeah, like a really strong one. And I knew that that God is asking me to do something. And the question was, how can you share about me, meaning God, if you don't know anything about me? Yeah. And so that question is what propelled me from, I still did not go back to church. I had to process that in a different way. But my first step was, I didn't even know God. I didn't know who he really was. And so that question made so much sense. Like, I don't know him. And I was starting to have this little desires of like wanting to share God to Michael, because remembering how miserable I felt when I denied God, I was like, man, like life was so much better when I believed in God. Like, even though chaos was happening, you know, you talked about resilience, but really for me, because God protected me and was with me every step of the way. And that's the difference. When you peel yourself away from God, like it's just it's a miserable world. Yeah. And then, so I was like, I have to go back to that. I didn't have to go back to church at that time, but I was like, but I needed God's presence again. So I allowed, you know, God in my life again. And then I had the desire of, man, I want to share him to Michael. But I was like I said, the Holy Spirit asked me that question. How can you share about me when you don't know me? And so that started the journey of reading the Bible. I was like, I've always been insecure with reading because since I came from Philippines, like reading comprehension was really hard. And so I was like, oh, man, like, you know, I don't really understand the Bible, but there's just that reassurance that, you know, eventually you'll understand it, you know? And then so here and there, you know, I would be like reading a little bit, but nothing too serious yet until 2019. So in 2019, or hold on. Actually, before that, I did kind of start going to church already, slowly, not consistently.
Michael, or just by yourself?
Actually, with Michael. But then the way I would approach it is like, if you don't want to go with me, please don't. I tell him, if you're going just because you want to be with me, I don't want you to go. Go because you actually want to. I mean, in the beginning, he did come because he wanted to go for me. But then he started like really choosing to go for himself. But I keep telling him, I really don't want you to go if you're not if you're not gonna be willing to go, because I don't like forcing people. Because it's not a choice if you're forced to go because I said so, And so I also started realizing that I started seeing every human being in church as broken people, and that's why they go to church. I had to realize that I cannot attach the brokenness of people and judge the whole entire church community because some of them hurt me, but realizing that I cannot go to church for people. I cannot go to church because like I need someone to like be nice to me or be kind to me. I had to work on, I'm going to church because I want this relationship with God that a lot of adults talk about, and I'm like, I want that. Like, how can they talk about God like that? I envy that, like the way they describe God, and like they would be in tears talking about God, and I'm like, man, I've never reached that point where I'm like crying about God, and I'm like, I want that. And then I realized, okay, I'm going to church not because I want to be necessarily, my goal was not community at that time. It's just to have a relationship with God. And so I started going here and there, not consistent, but I started going. And then in 2019, I met an associate pastor in the local church in Dalton, and he inspired me to read the Bible. He said, even if you don't understand it, like it's in your mind anyway, just keep reading. And then eventually, like, just read through it anyway. So I did.
The whole Bible, back to front?
Genesis to Revelation. It took me 3 years. Because I decided I had to take time to try to comprehend.
Of course.
But, like, I was so intimidated at first because, like I said, I don't really understand. And also I was like, you know what? I always relied on the preachers to tell me about the Bible, but wait, I can read. Like, I know my comprehension's not great, but I can read. Like, I can do this too. I don't need to be a preacher to know a lot about the Bible. And so I read the Bible, and it just transformed my life. My relationship with God just really shifted, and it became real. Or it was always real, but now I understand. I understand who God is in my life, his role in my life. And then I started understanding Jesus, his sacrifice. Because before, it was just a thing that I hear from church, but I didn't understand what that sacrifice meant, what that love meant. And, there was a moment later on, like during that transformation, there was a moment that I, went to church, and like, I remember, the moment when Jesus got baptized, and then, there's a dove that came down, and it said, "This is my son, in whom I am well pleased." And this didn't happen not too long ago, just like in 2021. We were worshiping, and it felt like there was a dove that came down, and that was when I was working on my identity, which, like I said, not too long ago, and and I heard it, like God said, "This is my daughter, in whom I am well pleased." And so,
so that validation you never got from your mom, you got it from God.
And so like the transformation really for me happened when I read the Bible for myself. And that's the message that I tell others, because that was the way, that's the way to learn God and to understand like
scriptures is self-revelation of his love and who he is.
It's the full story of why we're even here, what our purpose is, and we can't understand that unless we see it for ourselves. We can hear it, like it's like you tell me about a person all day long, but I don't really know that person until I meet that person. And for me, the way I see it is like I can tell you about God all day long, but if you have not read the Bible for yourself and really see who he is, then you can't really know him in that way. Like, that's my belief,
So you came full circle end of 2019 or 2020?
So
like when you're like, you're fully back, like in relationship in...
Basically, when I like 2019, I think all of 2019, I finished the Old Testament, and like you see God's love within that.
Within the Old Testament,
and so my relationship with God was just like super strong, and I was like, he is my father, and there is no way I will ever leave like leave your side again. I will never allow this to happen again.
Yeah.
And understanding like how much he has protected me, like, since I was
all those events in your life.
Yeah.
And then when did Michael become a believer?
So
Of course.
I don't remember specifically when, but like he just started seeing, because for him in his story, he saw Christians as fake too. He was hurt by like Christians and saw like, oh my gosh, like these people are just fake, like they're unkind.
Yeah.
But he saw the funny thing, remember earlier, like I wanted to introduce God to Michael, but the funny thing is I was working on my relationship with God, but then in effect of that, Michael started changing based off of what he was seeing in me. And I didn't even have
powerful witness.
Yeah, because I was like there's no way I'm going to be one of those people like in the future who'd be like, yeah, my husband was an atheist and then his life was changed, and that is my story now. But the power of vulnerability and being real is really what hit home for him. He saw the brokenness and why I still cling to God, because like he would watch me. Actually, I started being comfortable with crying in front of him while praying to God when I was in such turmoil, because my mental health kind of plummeted down, which that's a different story. But I was working through my mental health all at the same time, but then clinging to God all at the same time. And it was beautiful. Like it's beautiful chaos. A lot of working through all the past hurts and everything. And just like having God like in my side and having like an amazing husband in my side, like which God, brought to me. It's funny because, Michael is like an angel and then brought to me. So he saw all that. And, until today, like, we're go to church
together. No, that's awesome.
Yeah. And he chooses to go, and, he's still in the early stages of understanding Christianity, but definitely believes that.
But he's a theist now, and
I guess.
And he's leaning more towards Christianity in his journey, but he hasn't like made a public display, like baptized belief yet. Okay, that's fine. But at least he's a theist now. It's like you got him. That's one step. Where it's like, okay, you can't just go from atheist to Christian. He's like, you got to at least get him to believe that there is such thing as a God. But it's amazing that through your brokenness, like God was able to reach your husband. And your story is interesting because you mentioned like the early childhood years and like your father's side of the family, which was Christian Adventist, and feeling home there and being involved and having this view of God as loving, and then growing up and then living with your mother who was not so warm and loving and giving that approval that you wanted. And then going through that journey, it's like, honestly, you were really terrible at being an atheist because you're like, you wanted not to believe, but because of your Adventist upbringing and that picture of God you had early, even though it became distorted because of your father and your mother and then the other people in your lives who claim to be Christians. But you were still deep down clinging to God, so the atheism didn't stick very long.
No.
But then God brought an atheist in your life
because I was so empty and I needed a lifeline, and God, that was my only lifeline. Like it was the only way I could really survive my life. Like it was, without God, like I always tell people, if without God I'm dead. Not physically dead, but my soul,
walking dead. So how has that impacted your personal ministry, your personal witness today, your story? Like how do you reach people? How have you used it to witness to people?
So after learning more about Jesus and his ministry, I understand like, sharing the gospel and just sharing love, loving first. And so I treat people, especially in the field that I work in, they are the most underserved and very judged, criticized group of people.
What's the field? Can we just for people who are...
So I'm a nurse, but I'm a psychiatric nurse in an inpatient psych facility. And so and in any job or line of job that I do, wherever I am, whatever I'm doing, I'm always thinking about, what would Jesus do? And there's this slogan from Atlanta, or they're a company actually, it's what would Jesus do? And then they created this answer called HWLF, and it stands for He Would Love First. And I have a lot of shirts and I have a lot of like bracelets, and so people would ask about it. But for me, that became kind of like a slogan of like, He would love first. So for me, no matter what you are, what your upbringing is, whatever you identify as, like I will love you first, And today I am not ashamed of the gospel. I was super shy to talk about God, like to say God in my mouth. Like it felt like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna be like, the Jesus freak of the school or whatever. So I'm like, I don't want to say God, like, around most of my friends. But now I can't stop talking about him. I want people to know who he is, and I'm not afraid to share him, because the world needs that kind of light. Like in this miserable world, we need that light.
Yeah.
And so I tell them a little bit of a part of me and how I was transformed, and then, but also treat them first, treat them well first.
Yeah, no, of course. Like, I think it's important to people when you're sharing the gospel that they need to know your story.
Yeah.
Before you share, like, and how the gospel has impacted your story and your life, so they can see that there's a real effect to believing and putting your faith and your hope in this. What would you recommend people who are going through what you're going through now to, what are some resources, some tips that you would give them, to someone who's listening, who's struggling through this type of hurt, and is on their way out, or maybe they've already left and maybe they're getting that tug like you got to come back? What advice would you give them?
I actually say the same advice, I guess, like to my patients. It's like, don't, it's cheesy, but like really don't give up on God. That even if sometimes you feel like you want to, just don't. And resources wise, like I said, reading the Bible for like as your foundation has to be the first thing that you do, because it really gives you that strong foundation that you can really stand on, because everything else is people's opinions, and which is okay, but then you have to have that foundation. Once you have that, you can stand on that rock, you can, and it's very, very, very stable. And I love that word, because my life was very unstable, and I found stability like in the Word of God. And then on top of that, like I listened to several like podcasts that really like helped me kind of interpret or explain some things to me. Why They Did That is one of my favorite podcasts, because they dive into the stories, Bible character stories, and kind of
I've heard of it. I haven't listened to it yet.
It's
but I'll
really
give it
good.
a listen. Yeah,
I highly recommend it if you want to learn more about deeper into the stories of the Bible characters. It's beautiful. And then I also listened to Rise and Lead by Benjamin Lundquist, and that helped me kind of like,
Ben's a cool guy.
Yeah. I met him at camp, so like when I saw I had a podcast, I'm like, ooh, like very, very empowering, encouraging. And but besides that, like it's really reading the Bible and having that intentionality of seeking after God. That's
good. Intentionality.
Yeah.
Seeking after God.
Because you can read the Bible and seek God, but when your mind's elsewhere and you're not really sitting and having like a date with God every single day, then but just keep going though, and keep, like I said, don't give up on God.
Yeah. And one last question. This is a new question that I'm going to start throwing into the interviews, but what advice would you have to the church as the organization to implement to help individuals like you to not have to go through that hurt and journey of leaving the church, but how can the organization resources to keep people in and help them through these difficult questions and emotions and hurt that they're going through?
So for me, naturally, like I'm gonna lean towards answering in the mental health perspective, because that's like when I had that first mental break, I really wish we had resources back then within the church that where there's maybe there's actually resources now where you can be a mental health coach, and I'm trying to become one. They're called mental health coach responders, that if someone expressed like having mental health issues, I can be that resource.
Or
different churches actually. I saw this like in one of the local churches in Chattanooga, and I was like, it's for free, so it's I haven't done it yet, but like it's a certificate that I can get, and that I guess I haven't gotten in the details yet. But something like that, and we need more of that, because in reality, a lot of us struggle with their mental health. We do. It's just we feel afraid to share about it. So it would be good if we had a resource where people feel comfortable to reach out to those people who expressed something like that. Because for example, like for me, I'm a resilient person and I'm pretty strong. So I might have I would say like, I feel depressed, and I would just be nonchalant about it, but deep inside I'm really depressed. And so it's important to have people who will specifically try to respond to that and give them, and they don't have to be a counselor, but just give them resources to like, okay, I think, or give them advice on where to go. Okay, here are your resources. You can try going to a psychiatrist, you can try going to like a therapist, or and then here's some resources like for books to read, like here are some things like, and and we're here for you, like for someone to respond instead of, because for me, like they didn't really know how to handle that. And so for me, I guess they're starting to have that now, but I hope that a lot more churches will really
start to implement
those things. And I want to be one of those people in the front lines to really push that, because I see the need for mental health and how, as Christians especially, we hide it away. But we need to, in order for us to get rid of the darkness in our life, we have to like expose it, so that the light can puncture through the darkness. Because when we keep it, that's what I think, at least. But
no, awesome. Thank you. Like, I just wanted to get your opinion on that, and I think it's a valid opinion, and we hope to see more of these things implemented to help people who are struggling with these emotions and feelings. But Grace, thank you so much for joining the podcast. It was very awesome to have you on there. No, it wasn't that bad. It was great. It was fun.
So someone looking at you.
It was good. Thank you for sharing your story, and I hope that whoever's listening to this, who might be going through something similar, will be impacted for the better.
I hope so,
and move forward in their journey. So thank you so much for joining us. Guys, there you have it. That's another episode of the Church Hurt podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in. And if you do like this episode, please like and share it. It will mean the world to us. Follow us on Instagram at Church Hurt Podcasts, and we'll see you in the next episode. Peace.